Jesi milostivi čovekoljubi Bog i tebi slavu uznosimo, Otcu i Sinu i Svetome Duhu, sada i u vekove vekova.
In a world of shadows and secrets untold, where primeval stories make the brave go cold, mighty gods on high and realms below, whispers of legends that shape each soul. And nightmarish dreams, cryptids lurking, nothing's as it seems, giants walking, angels and demons fight, only truth can bring the light. Through the echoes of time, the tales unfold, mysteries arise as the prophecies are foretold, from valiant knights to buried treasure. This podcast brings nothing but pleasure. Welcome to myth, mysteries and majesty. Study with us, don't be a travesty. Theology, mythology, fantasy and horror, dungeons and dragons, Skyrim and Mordor. And Mordor, the powers haunt the evening, in gothic castles where they're screaming. Wizards cast spells in their towers tonight, exploiting enigmas hidden from our sight. Archaeologists make excavations deep of the ancient tombs where pharaohs sleep. In the dust of ages we chronicles keep, storytelling's power of monsters that creep. Mysteries and majesty is the place for you to learn about this haunted space. From scholarship to manuscripts of old, unlock the secrets of wisdom and gold.
Blessed Sunday, and welcome to episode 177. After taking a short vacation, and in the meantime, my co-host Sean taking over the podcast, we're going back live. And for this episode, I'm especially thankful and pleased that Dr. David D. Graves, he accepted my invitation to come to the podcast for the fourth time and share some of his vast knowledge and experience when it comes to the field of biblical archaeology and archaeology in general. Before we start diving into this very interesting episode and fascinating one for tonight, I just wanted to ask Dr. David D. Graves to introduce himself again and tell us something about his work, his books, podcasts, and things of that sort.
Well, great to be with you, Nikolai. It's always a pleasure. I'm a retired professor of archaeology now, after 20 years of teaching and working in the field as a field archaeologist over in Israel and Jordan, Turkey. I retired and I've written about 40 some books on the subject. So I've got another one I'm going to announce there in a little bit. I'm going to show some photos for everyone, and I've put my memoirs together. It's called Beneath the Sands of Time, the Adventures of an Archaeologist, and I tell all my stories in there. 300 or 400 pages, lots of pictures, and kind of chronicles what I've done. That's more of the non-professional side of things. But we have our own podcast that, if you don't mind, I'll mention Bible Interact. We exploring archaeology from the ground down, and we've got 250,000 followers on our podcast as well. So it's a popular subject. People like it, and it's great that we can share these things that they don't hear elsewhere. So always a pleasure to share in your program, and good to be with you.
Thank you for your kind words, and I'm excited for tonight's episode. And also, I wanted to tell the audience that I have included Dr. Graves's website. Please support his work. His books have amazing reviews. You will be enjoying them. Your pastor will be enjoying them. Your church, your congregation will benefit. To learn more when it comes to archaeological data and how they support biblical text, especially when it comes to tonight's episode, New Testament. So, Dr. Grace, I don't know if you would like to share your screen now, and maybe if we can start with first and the longer segment of this episode when it comes to the Pontius Pilate.
Yes, we'll get started here. I'll see if we can get this to work properly. And let's see if I go in here.
Okay, perfect.
Continue to share. Okay. So we're going to be talking about Pontius Pilate this evening, and I want to talk about two items that are displayed here on our cover plate. It's a ring of Pontius Pilate. That's a drawing of it that I did for a publication in the Near East Archaeological Society bulletin a few years ago. And we're going to talk about that, where it was found and so forth. It's got his name on it. That's why it's important. And then we're going to look at the inscription behind the gentleman seated. That's just AI generated to give a sense of what he possibly could have looked like. One of my books that contains this material is called The Archaeology of the New Testament. And there's lots of photographs, and there's about 75 archaeological discoveries that support the reliability of the New Testament. Oh, that's my wife waving to me there from her square to Tel El Hammam in Jordan a few years ago. This is one of my newest books. It's not published yet, but be watching for it. It's my newest. It's the Webb, the World English Bible, New Testament Study Bible, Archaeological Edition. And it's in production right now. And you're the first to see it, your audience. That's what the inside pages look like. So it's got an introduction, and it's got an outline for each of the books, and lots of photographs, lots of breakaway, talking about John the Baptist and the Essenes. I'm not sure how many there's going to be in total at the end, but probably about 1,300 or so breakaway plates. And there's the Qumran K53, which I excavated, and those are the discoveries we made. So it's got a lot of very unique material in it, along with the full New Testament edition of the World English Bible. That's one of the newer ones. It's based on the 1901 American Standard Version, and it's copyright free is why I can use it. So I don't have to pay copyright to the big corporations that like to produce all their stuff. But
yeah, because they never have enough money. But I wanted to say that I am fascinated by the quality of your photos. This will be, oh my gosh, I really hope that this Bible will be a huge success because it deserves. Just observing the photos, it looks amazing.
Yeah, the photos are all highest quality you'll find anywhere. I use some from courtesy of some friends. Many of them you'll know. Their photos are used in other study Bibles as well. But I also have probably about half of them are mine. Half the photos are mine, and they're really high quality. So it's done with the highest degree of. I do all the interior design myself, so it's going to be a nice. It's going to be a nice keepsake. It'll be in hardcover, and about 550 pages, between 500 and 550 pages. So it's going to be a thick volume. I couldn't squeeze the whole Old Testament into it, so that's why I only did the New Testament for now. But anyway, it's what it's going to look like, and lots of good stuff in there for everybody. Well, back to our subject for this evening. We're going to be talking about Pontius Pilate, and this puts us in the history of the New Testament period at around AD 27 to 37 when Emperor Tiberius was ruling as the Roman emperor. In fact, this is the tribute penny that is often mentioned in the Bible, the silver denarius. It's got his picture on it, son of the divine Augustus. So he was deified. And then Livia, it's actually his wife seated Pontifex Maximus. Now she's kind of special to me because I discovered the city of Livia or Livius in Jordan and excavated the Roman bath complex for 15 seasons or 10 seasons of the 15 in Jordan. I excavated a 35 by 50 meter bath complex, a bathhouse. So I believe it was Herod Antipas. He beheaded John the Baptist, if you remember. So that was a pretty important discovery, and it was named after this lady right here who was seated, Livia, and she was deified as well after she passed away. Here's the gold Aris of Caesar Tiberius with his mugshot on it, his bust, and he's got the laurel wreath showing, and there's Livia, another holding a branch and holding a scepter in her hand. So this is the time period that we're looking at. And this is one of the photographs of Tiberius that I took in, I believe I took that in Turkey. I forget which museum of Ephesus, I think. Anyway, the study Bible will have all of the attributions in the bottom of every picture or article, so you can look them up. So the Pontius Pilate inscription, of course, we know of Pontius Pilate because he's mentioned in the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all four of the Gospels. A historical figure then who served as the prefect of Judea during the 1st century. Now, what's kind of interesting is that up until 1961, we had no verification outside of scripture and ancient texts and writings of the existence of Pontius Pilate. So in 1961, this popped up, and we'll talk about it in a little more detail, but that's why this is so important. So Pontius Pilate, we know of him. We know he's a historical figure. Not much is known about his early life. It's believed that he was born probably somewhere in Spain, Roman province of Hispania, which is modern day Spain, in about 1 BC. His career in public service began when he joined the Roman army. So he was a military man. He rose to the ranks and eventually became the prefect of Judea, a position that he held from approximately 26 to 36 AD. So if he was born in 1 BC, you know, he's only 27 years of age, so he's a pretty youngin', but he's got a lot of experience in the militia. Now, as the prefect, his role was responsible for maintaining the Roman control over the region and enforcing the Roman laws on the people that he's governing over in this region. And of course, this is the whole time period in which Jesus is roaming Galilee and is living in Palestine at that time. And during his tenure, Pilate faced several challenges, including managing the religious and the political tensions in Judea. The Jews in Judea weren't very happy of the Romans having control over them and usurping power over them and putting heavy taxation on them. They had to bring that tribute penny and the Tyrian denarius to the temple to pay taxes, and it was quite a heavy taxation. I know all about that as a Canadian. We pay about 50% tax here in Canada, so it's pretty crazy the amount of money that you pay. You wouldn't mind it so much if they spent it properly, but instead they waste it on other things. So I can understand how the Jewish people living in Judea are not too pleased with the Romans governing over them at that time period. One of the most significant events, of course, is associated with Pontius Pilate's rule, was his involvement in the trial and crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth, that we have mentioned in Scripture. According to the biblical account, Pilate reluctantly ordered Jesus' execution despite finding no fault in him, yielding to the demands of the Jewish religious leaders and of the crowds. I guess we could probably relate it to some things we see going on in our politics today, if we think hard enough, of how people do things not because they believe it's the right thing to do, but because they do it because they think they're going to get the votes and they're going to be a crowd pleaser. And that was the position that Pilate put himself in. Now, some people really like Pilate because of that. They think that he really didn't think Jesus was bad, and it's really the crowd's fault, not his, that Jesus was crucified. But that's a debate probably for another podcast. Now, Pilate's governance was marked by a series of controversies and clashes with the local population, as I mentioned. His decisions often sparked unrest and protests among the Jewish population, much like today when the politicians do something and make a decision, the people protest, and leading to severe, in some instances, of violence. Historical records indicate that Pilate's rule was characterized by a mixture of authoritarianism and attempts to maintain stability in a violent region. So he tried to, walk down the middle of the line, and he wanted to keep Rome happy, and he wanted to keep the Jewish people happy. He didn't want revolts that didn't reflect good back on him. So he was doing all he could to make sure that things ran smoothly in his district. And after his time in Judea, Pilate's fate really remains uncertain. We're not sure what happened to him. Some historical accounts suggest that he was recalled to Rome due to his harsh rule in their eyes, while others indicate that he may have faced political repercussions or even been exiled. Basically, they send them to Siberia if they don't do a good job.
But you know what crosses my mind? Imagine if he was moved to another area, because if he was so harsh, so that means that he was harsh even for Roman standards, not just generally harsh. He was too harsh even for them. That's mind blowing.
Yes, yeah, and he really had a big conundrum on his hands with the Jewish people there. Of course, 70 A.D. They destroy Jerusalem and take over in the Jewish revolt, Second Jewish Revolt. The Jews all go up to Masada and camp out there, and for 2 years they build a ramp up and try to attack all of the Jews that are on top of Masada. When they show up and get up there, they discovered that they had all committed suicide, so they weren't able to take any of them captive. So there's a lot of history that goes on here, and so he really had his hands full with the Jewish revolts, and so Rome considered it to be a very harsh rule. So you are right. So really, did they put him someplace else, or did they just sort of retire him? The exact details of his later life and his death are really unclear in the writings. Well, here's a map. These are the maps you'll find in the study Bible. They're maps I've drawn myself. High quality. They're based on the actual locations on Google Earth. So I do, I do an overlay, and so it's all geographically accurate, and they're all listed there, the archaeological sites and the capitals and so on and so forth. Now the boundaries are not exact, because nobody really knows the exact boundary. There's not, apart from the Jordan River creating a boundary between Judea and Perea, but even that sometimes fluctuates and crosses the boundary. But they are good indications of where things are. So for the Pontius Pilate inscription, this limestone piece of rock, it was found in a place called Caesarea Maritima, a seaport right on the coast. And it was excavated by an Italian archaeologist, Antonio Frova. He was excavating the Roman theater in 1961. And he was working on the stairs, and he flipped over this piece of stone, and on the other underside of it, there was this inscription. Now that's important because it's kind of indicative. It was being used in secondary use. So basically what happened was they had a sign up with Pilate's name on it. After he gets kicked out of the area, they say, well, that's a perfectly good piece of limestone. We need a step. So they just throw it in and turn it over, and presto, they've got themselves an easy made stair for their theater. And we often find things like this being used in secondary use. I've discovered them in the bath complex at Tel El Hammam in Jordan at Livius. And it's displayed today in the Israel Museum. There's the accession number, AE 1963, number 104. And you can see it if you go there. There's a replica today of it in Caesarea Maritima. They have one on location, but it's a replica. And many museums have replicas as well, because it's so famous. So almost any museum you go to will have a replica of it. I'm not sure when I lived in Russia if there was one in the Pushkin Museum or not. They had many replicas, but British Museum, Philadelphia, I think there's a replica of it. Anyway, you can look it up. The important thing is that the real one is in the Israel Museum. And if you go to Caesarea Maritima, around the theater, you'll see another reproduction, a replica of it. The biblical significance as well, Pontius Pilate had been mentioned in ancient texts, in Tacitus and Josephus and Philo. This was the first physical evidence that Pilate had existed. As you know, the liberal scholars in the past centuries used to try and dismiss scripture by saying these events didn't really happen, they made the stories up, and so on and so forth. We don't have any evidence that Pilate existed because we never found his name on a piece of stone. Well, now we do. In 1961, they found it. So that's a big deal. There's the theater. If you want to go visit it, it's been restored. Beautiful. They have concerts, modern day concerts there often, and it's all lit up at night, and it's pretty impressive. And the acoustics are just wonderful. Pilate lived in Caesarea. So this was his hometown. So this is where he lived. So that's very, very common to find his name there. Perfectly legitimate because he lived there and was ruling over the area from there. And he only went to Jerusalem on special occasions, for example, the trial of Jesus. So it's not surprising we find his name here at this spot. And there's the photograph that I took. That's the, I think that's the reproduction one. I also have a photo of one I took in the British Museum, or the Israel Museum, but this one had better lighting outdoors. Bible places. Todd Boland, a friend of mine, that's some of his photographs. Here's the one in the Israel Museum. I got a display of it, description in both Arabic and Hebrew. I think there's also an English description.
So Dr. Graves, for someone who never been to see a copy of this amazing discovery, how faithful are these copies? They're in different museums throughout the world. If you would compare it to the original, can you tell they're pretty much matched?
Oh yes, they do exact replicas of them. There's companies, in fact, you can buy replicas of them, smaller ones. We have many replicas. We show them in our podcast. Our podcast is called, we have another podcast called Explorers of the Lost Vaults. And what we do is we have a vault. A friend of ours has a vault for a museum where it's stashed full of artifacts, originals. And we take them out of the vault and we show them on our podcast. And so we have a replica of this that we can show and gives everybody an idea. Now this one is very large. I think I provide the measurement somewhere, but it would be probably like 3 feet high. But they do laser copies of museum artifacts. They'll take a laser photo of it, a laser image, and then they're able to reproduce it in plaster. You can get it in plastic, plaster, pretty much whatever you want. This is limestone itself, but that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Now the inscription on it reads, and you can actually see it here in the Latin. If anybody can read Latin and has taken Latin in school, it's kind of a lost art these days, but I took it a little bit. Iberium ius Pilatus Praefectus Judaeae. So Tiberium of the Caesareans, that's a question mark there. Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea, has given. And that's what we can read so far on that inscription. So there's enough there that we can definitely tell who he is. So that's his name. It's either part of a large inscription dedicating a temple to the Emperor Tiberius in Caesarea, or it's commemorating the restoration of the harbor, quite a significant harbor, and Josephus mentions both of those. Oh, my ADD just kicked in. I see that the BJ and the AJ should be italicized because that's the name of the book, The Jewish Wars. And anyway, that's something I'm obsessed with as an author and have written several books. Well, the recent archaeological research around the harbor would support the latter proposal, that it's probably commemorating the restoration of Caesarea Maritima's harbor. And it's quite an impressive structure in and of itself. And that takes you into the whole realm of underwater archaeology, and I'm no expert in that field. If you want to go to the best underwater archaeology museum in the world, it's in Turkey. It's an old castle, and the name just avoids me right now. It's terrible getting old, but if you just type that in, And I visited it and have a lot of photos from it. They have some beautiful reproductions. So if you want underwater archaeology, go to Turkey, go to this this medieval castle that they've turned into an underwater archaeology museum, and you'll see some beautiful amphoras and a reproduction of a ship in a shipwreck. Lots of good stuff there.
I was in Turkey yesterday, but just at the airport.
Okay, well, Erzurum, no. Oh, it'll come to me. If it comes to me in the middle of the podcast, I'll blurt it out. Well, the mention of Pontius Pilate with Tiberius puts Pontius Pilate in the same time frame, of course, as Jesus in the 1st century. And so we're talking about a character who lived and spoke to Jesus. The other thing that this does is it also clarifies Pontius Pilate's title. The gospel speaks of him as a governor. The Greek is hegemon in Matthew and Luke, so it speaks of the governor. And Tacitus speaks of him as the procurator, epitropos. Now, there's been a big debate over his title and his rank by scholars. What was he? Was the Bible wrong? Was Tacitus right? Did they make a mistake? Well, the discovery of the Pontius Pilate inscription settles the issue. It provided his office title as prefect, prefectus. So he was the prefect. While this discovery does not prove that Pontius Pilate spoke with Jesus or demonstrate that the crucifixion took place, it does support the historical reliability of the Gospels in the Bible in corroborating the existence of one of the major characters, Pontius Pilate. I always warn my students, you need to be really careful that you don't make more of the evidence than is there. Don't put words in the mouth of archaeology. It can only give us so much information, but it doesn't disprove the Bible. It supports it. Its reliability here. So that's the big deal about the inscription. Now, a lot of people probably have heard about the inscription. If you've got a study Bible, you would probably find that in there. The Pilate ring, however, is a new discovery or a new translation, and I would suggest you probably haven't heard of this before. Now, I know of it because when it was announced, I went to work and I wrote a peer-reviewed journal article for it in the Near East Archaeological Journal. So I became quite familiar with it. So it's got a story all to its own. And for this, we're going to go to a different location in Israel and look at a different site. But it's all going to be focused around Pontius Pilate. So for this, we want to go to the Herodium. Now, this is kind of an interesting site. It looks like a volcano. So if you look at it from the side, it's just this big mountain. But if you look at it from the air, like we're looking at it here, it's got this little cone-shaped, dug down into the top of a mountain. Well, it's actually man-made. The whole place is man-made. It was one of Herod's fortresses. Fascinating place to go and visit. And here's Herodium right down here. I don't know if you're going to be able to see my mouse. There's Jerusalem right there. And there's Caesarea Maritima there. So we had, Pilate had to travel from here all the way down to here to Jerusalem. for the trial. But remember, Herod the Great, this is one of his fortresses right here. He wanted to put to death all of the young children when Jesus was born, remember? And where was it where Jesus was born? Bethlehem, right here. You can actually see from the top of this Herodian, you can see from there Bethlehem, clear as day. You can almost throw a stone, it's just a village away. So Herod was probably here on the Herodium when he made the declaration and he wants to put all those the young boys to death. Not uncommon for him to do such a thing. He had a number of his wives killed and a number of his sons, so it wasn't out of his character to do such a thing. But that all took place down here at his fort in Herodium. And they find the ring with Pontius Pilate's name on it here. So this is Herod's sarcophagus. Now there's kind of an interesting story behind this as well. This is the mausoleum a modern mausoleum representation of where they found their sarcophagus. The archaeologist that was looking for this for many, many years was reading Josephus, and Josephus said that Herod died and was buried here, and he wanted to find his tomb. Well, this is not the archaeologist. This is Gideon Forster. He was excavating the Herodium in 1968 and 69. Again, both these go back to the 60s. Well, he discovered this thing, but it was all covered with dirt, and it was just put away in storage, and they didn't really take a good look at it and clean it up until 2018 when it was first published. So, almost 50 years they had it. It had been excavated, but they didn't clean it up enough to find out what it was reading, what it was saying.
So, Dr. Graves, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just super curious. Why does it take 50 years for something so significant to publish, besides clearing and getting funds and enough experts and people and staff to work on this? Why would it take 50 years to publish if you know this is important?
Well, they didn't know it was important. That's the thing. They didn't know what it said. It was all class. It was all no. They didn't really clean it up enough. They just threw it in a drawer and in storage. They had so many things they were finding, so they didn't recognize it. And it was only when they were going back, going through the items, looking at it more carefully. I mean, the same thing happened at the British Museum just recently. We interviewed on our podcast Israel Finkel. He's the famous cuneiform translator in the British Museum. He's the curator, and he discovered recently one of the Babylonian account of the Noah's Ark. But the tablets have been in the British Museum, stored there for many, many years. But they didn't get it off the shelf and dust it off and read it and carefully look at it for many years later. And that's what happened in this particular case. They didn't know it was important. They didn't know what it said. And so it's only when they cleaned it up and looked at it. The journal article on the left is the Near East Archaeological Society Bulletin. That's where I published my article on it. And that photograph that you're looking at on the right is what made the front cover. I provided the photograph of it and the drawing, and they put it on the front cover of the journal. If you want to know a lot more about archaeology, it's a good organization to be a member of. It's evangelical archaeologists. So it affirms Pontius Pilate is mentioned in Scripture as well. And that's the guy that did the initial excavation. So that's what it looks like from the ground. It just looks like a big volcano. From the side, there's the theater on the side, and there's one of the walkways going up, and there's an entrance going through it. There's a visitor.
So I was wondering, have you been inside the whole fortress?
Yes, number of times.
Wow. I'm jealous because it looks amazing.
It is pretty impressive. It really is. And there's a visitor center there on the left. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. We did it actually. I did it on Christmas Day, on our way to Bethlehem. I spent Christmas Day in Bethlehem a number of years ago. That whole story's in my memoirs. So it's pretty neat to stand on top, look over at Bethlehem, and imagine Herod standing there, giving the decree to have all the children killed.
Yeah, I'll just make a short digression, if I can call it that way. It's funny how when we take so many evil people from the past who would be against God's people, both in the Old and New Testament, but also in the history of the Jews and the church, who will be, so to speak, just like Lucifer, looking down on people or on creation, being on sort of a high position. Like here, he built all of this. He looked down on all these Jewish children. He wanted them died just because of the prophecy. He was afraid of Jesus coming, and then God comes and deals with him. And then we see where's their end is death. There's no hope, no salvation, no reconciliation between them and God. No hope for them in the afterlife. So it's almost like an irony. We see all these people, the same like Lucifer. They want to be on high. They want to rule. They want to do all these things. But then at the end, it's like just this twisted tale of fate that comes after them, because God doesn't play with that.
The only hope is in the one that Pilate sent to the cross. There's the irony. There's the irony. Yeah. So it's pretty amazing to stand there, contemplate these things on Christmas Day. Now we know that, December 25th is not the actual day, but it's the day we use and celebrate. So it had symbolic significance for me, and it's pretty special. So here we are looking over at Bethlehem. That's actually the view from the top. So Bethlehem is just over the horizon. It's just right over here. That's Bethlehem. That's what it looks like looking inside, looking down inside. A lot of it's been excavated. It's just a beautiful spot to look around. We're looking there at one of the stoa and synagogue, mikvot. He tried to maintain some of the Jewish practices. Herod did, because he wanted to keep them happy as well. There's another photo that I took looking down. This was in 2009 when I was there. That wasn't Christmas. That was another year. It's a photo that made the front cover. We're looking now down inside the, this is the synagogue right here. That's the synagogue structure, Herodium. There's also one found in Masada, synagogue at Masada as well. So there's another photo of it, looking down inside. And they're still excavating there. They're still working on it. Now, what's very, very interesting is that the archaeologist who discovered his Herod's sarcophagus was walking up one of the stairways, Ehud Netzer, there's my friend on the right. He's Dr. Scott Stripling, walking up the stairs there. But Ehud Netzer was the one that had spent his entire life looking for the sarcophagus, and he discovered it. It's now in the Israel Museum. But he was walking up one of these stairways and was leaning on a wooden handrail and fell over to his death. And he died at the Herodium after discovering the sarcophagus of Herod the Great. 2010 he died. I was there at 2009, the year before his death. So what irony, what tragedy. That's probably the staircase that he was walking up. That's very rickety. The archaeologists were using that. And I don't know for sure where he fell and died, but it was on the Herodium. And what was interesting is that he looked for it for years inside the Herodium and couldn't find it. And then just before he died, he discovered it on the outside, and they erected this mausoleum at the location. So pretty impressive, pretty significant.
Yeah, I was just about to add quickly, those stairs or stairwells, they don't look super safe.
No. The archaeologists sort of jerry-rig some things. As we say, they don't have OSHA like we have it in the United States or here in Canada, especially in Jordan, but to a lesser degree in Israel. They're a little more secure. We had to put a beam up at the cave at Qumran when we excavated there before we could get into, because someone had died in one of the caves. So they did reinforce that. But yeah, it's not to the same standards exactly. This is what the sarcophagus looks like. Of course, there's debate. Some people say it's not elaborate enough to be Herod's sarcophagus, so it must be somebody else's. But Josephus says it was he was buried at the Herodium, and sure enough, he finds it in a mausoleum. So who else could it be, or who else would it be? And this is what the display looks like. Sarcophagus, and also some of the pieces of the cornice and some of the fancy marble and limestone that they have taken back to the museum and rebuilt and incorporated some of it into the archaeology display. This is courtesy of my good friend, Dr. Lane Rittmeyer, an archaeological architect. Many of the reproduction drawings you see in your Bibles are done by Lane Rittmeyer. And I spelled his name wrong. It's R-I-T. My ADD going in, kicking in again. There's another photograph from another angle. Now this what looks like a chalice is a piece of marble that or limestone that was on the corner of the building. Now that's going to come into view here in a few minutes when we talk about the ring, because we're going to get back to the ring here in a minute. So keep that in mind. So there's the article. And it was believed to be a wine crater to mix, and the name in Greek of Pilotos, Pilotol, of Pilate. In the Greek, it's possibly associated, I argue in my article, this is what my article is about, Pilate's ring and Roman religion, is a possible association with the Roman religious ceremonies. So the Romans celebrated the Suivitarulia, Bacchanalia, these, and the imperial cult on their coins. So that's what I go into a lot of detail, the imperial cult on the coins of Pontius Pilate. Because what do we find they all have in common? Well, the three coins that Pontius Pilate minted under his rule and reign all have symbols of the imperial cult on them. So I argue that's what he put on his ring. And that's the argument that I make. So I go into great detail in my article, and we're not going to take time to do all of that now. That's the actual photograph on the left by the IAA. And there's my drawing of it when you blow it up. And I do watercolor as a hobby, so I did a watercolor of it. And so I could
It
highlight.
looks amazing, honestly. You did a phenomenal job.
I do the highlights of it. Well, thank you. Yeah, I do wildlife. So all my tigers and my birds of prey are all on my wall here in my home. But it gives me. I'm doing actually right now. I'm doing the divorce certificate. It's on my easel right at the moment for the study Bible. So
Dr. Grace, I don't know why, but when I was listening to you and I saw a couple words in parentheses, you mentioned Bacchanalia. I was just curious. I don't know why. Is Bacchanalia the word that is associated with the Greek god Bacchus, because he was well known about, regarding different things, but including wine, fertility, if we can even say sex, things of that sort. Do you think that's connected?
Bacchus, yes, it's all connected. Yeah, they're all connected. Yeah, in fact, I'll probably mention it here in a moment. This is the mosaic of the triumph of Dionysus. Of course, Dionysus was the goddess of wine. So we have a crater there in the house of Dionysus. That's the early 3rd century AD. Bodrum Castle, there it is. There's a photo of Turkey. If you go to Bodrum, it's right on the coast. It's a beautiful, beautiful castle. And the harbor is just, the marina is right there. It's just absolutely gorgeous in its own right. Not to mention that it's an underwater archaeological museum. But that's how they stack these amphora in the belly of the ship. You see how it's all curved there? And that's how they would stack them. So we've got another wine crater there. We have a couple of coins, vessels on the Roman coins, very similar to the one that's on the ring. You can see the comparison there and how similar they are. This is a pruta. This is one of the smallest coins the Romans had. From the 4th Roman prefect of Judea province, Tiberius, from 15 to 26. So this even dates to the same time period, that coin. So there are the 3 coins blown up. And here we have the imperial cult on them. And here we have the ladle. They would scoop the wine out. It's called the simpulum. There's the crooked staff, the litus, on 2 of the coins. So every single coin that he minted had a symbol of the imperial cult on it. Now, the imperial cult is the cult of worshiping the emperor, for those that are listening that may not know this. The whole book of Revelation centers around this idea of the imperial cult. It's just filled with it. There'll be lots of information in my archaeological study Bible to help you understand the book of Revelation, with lots of breakouts and sidebars. So You want to
Yeah, well, several months ago, you and I did an episode on some of the churches in Revelation, especially focusing on the mark of the beast, if you remember. Yeah, that was a
Yes.
very good episode.
Yeah, 666 and gematria and
And the throne of Satan.
the throne of Satan and the significance of gematria, where you take numbers and can convert the letters of the name and into numbers, and Nero's name turns into 666. So it's all connected, this imperial cult stuff. But so we go back to Pontius Pilate and his coins. Well, he's got the symbols on his coins. Why wouldn't he have it on his ring? Here are some other coins with the denarius coins with the cultic symbols on them. I've pointed them all out. These were all used in the practice of the worship of the imperial cult. From the tripod stand for the altar, to the libation bowl, to the staff, the litus, to the ladle that's used to dip the wine, to the wine jar, the capus, and probably what's being referred to as the capus, the wine jar, on his ring. So, did you want to have any questions? Want to discuss some of these things a little further?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions in the live chat. The first one is, are there any Pilate's remains discovered?
You mean human remains?
Yeah, that's what I think the gentleman meant.
Yes. No, his body hasn't been found. We do have the ossuary of Caiaphas, the high priest. We have the burnt house in Jerusalem, which is the high priest's home that's been excavated. You can go to the museum in Jerusalem if you go there. Do I stop sharing? Are we good now? My PowerPoint's gone, is it?
Yeah, because you're done. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. I just didn't want that. I still had it up. I couldn't see myself.
Oh, yeah,
So-
you can't see yourself?
I do now, yes. I had to shrink it. So we do have Caiaphas, his ossuary with his name on it. No bones in it. We do have the human remains of the crucified man. There's a crucified individual, the heel bone. We've actually found human remains at Tal al-Hammam excavating at Sodom. So that was pretty amazing. Articulated individual, kind of blown apart. There's a photograph of that in my book on the location of Sodom. But we haven't found, they haven't found human remains. Either they haven't found the human remains of the individual that was in that sarcophagus of Herod either. So normally those things get raided and scavenged, so souvenirs or what have you. Is there another question or?
Yeah, the next question is, what was the Bethlehem's population at the time of that event? And then the gentleman corrected himself. He says Bethlehem and the surrounding areas. If we know any roughly, population of that time of Pontius Pilate.
We do. It's probably in my book. I have a book on the cities of the New Testament world. And I go through, it's quite a thick volume. It's about 600 pages. And in there I deal with Bethlehem, and I do an analysis of the population of most of the first century cities. So I probably have it in there, but on the top of my head, I don't know. But you could look it up there. And they do the calculations based on so many people living in a dunam or an acre of property, how many people can live in a certain area. And there's a couple of different calculations. So we know the population of Rome and Jerusalem and things of that nature. based on their size. They're pretty accurate.
Okay. The next question is, are you familiar with the recent mosaic discovered under the prison in Megiddo? It says, Jesus our God.
Yes, I have a whole section of that in my book. It's treated in the Archaeology of the New Testament. That's one of they consider that to be one of the earliest first century or possible first century churches. I think it dates to the 3rd century or something. That's why I wrote my books. I got to look up the details of the information in my own book. Yeah, I actually have it here in front of me, right beside me. Let me look it up.
Very nice.
Yeah, that was a recent. They were excavating the prison, expanding the
I
prison.
remember reading that article and covering shortly on our podcast, and I was amazed because, I mean, you never know if people would hide certain information, especially if they're not followers of Jesus. So it could be a controversial thing for them. So I was like, I was glad that they were honest, because they don't have to believe in Jesus, but they still don't have to hide, like, hey, here's the evidence we found. We may not believe that Jesus is the promised Messiah, but look, we found this, engraving or whatever. So for me, that was amazing.
Yeah, it was a beautiful mosaic. Megiddo, do I have it in here? I have so many books. There's the mosaic of Caesarea Maritima. They found a mosaic at Caesarea Maritima with a quote from Romans 13, verse 3. So there's a medallion on the floor.
Yeah, I found something. Yeah, I found just on mere Googling. So I think that's
it with the fish.
Yeah. It's a beautiful one, honestly.
Oh, I love mosaics, and that is actually one of the nicer ones.
And it's an early one, so that's also very significant, which helps people, especially skeptics, to see, like, one of the conspiracy theories is that Jesus' disciples and believers in the 1st century AD, they didn't actually believe that Jesus is God. Supposedly, this is a later addition. So when we show them evidence like this, we're like, no, archaeology actually tells us, opposite than what you're claiming. It perfectly aligns with the Bible. Jesus was seen as God from the very beginning.
Yeah, this is one of the first references to outside the Bible to basically Jesus as God, and that's why it was quite significant, because it's written in stone, and also kind of significant that you have the 2 fish, which comes back to the idea of the mosaic at Magdala with the loaves and fishes, and Jesus feeding the 4,000 and the 5,000. So we have a mosaic here representing the loaves and fishes, and of course the other are very, very common types of mosaic patterns that we see around in the squares. One of my good friends, she's and her name again. It's terrible getting old, folks. Your memory starts going on you. I dug with her at Shiloh for a number of years, and actually the Temple Mount Sifting Project. And I can see her name almost. She found a bunch of the tessera, apopsectali, the marble pieces that they put together in patterns to make these squares. But this one was from the Temple Mount. So she was able to reconstruct the floor from the temple in the Temple Mount area. And she made news all over on that. The other big news this week, if anybody hasn't been watching, it's been all over the place, is my good friend, Dr. Scott Stripling. We dug together and discovered Livius together. Went over, he's the director at Shiloh. Now, Shiloh is where the Ark of the Covenant was for many, many years. This season, he believes he's found the tabernacle structure where the Ark of the Covenant sat in a permanent structure with a tent over the top of it. And that's all documented in ancient writings. So when the Ark of the Covenant went to reside at Shiloh, they put it in a building, and he believes he's found the building. It measures perfectly. I excavated it and stood in the middle of it a number of years ago when I was there. So that's made news everywhere. Yeah, biblical Shiloh, there it is, Armstrong. And there's
What is his last name again?
Stripling.
Okay,
Scott
do you think
Stripling.
it's this second Armstrong Institute of Biblical Archaeology? Do you think that's the article?
Yep, well, it's one of them. I've seen that article and read it. That's one of them. They interviewed him. Armstrong Institute was there. But I mean, I'm talking about Daily Mail. I'm talking about the New York Times. Like a lot of the big have been carrying it because it's made that kind of biggest news. And in fact, the Speaker of the House was at Shiloh this week, visiting our site, as well as another big politician. So on their vacation, that's one of the sites they were at. So that's why it's made such big news. Yep.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, the last question for tonight, Dr. Draves, because I don't want to keep you for too long and too late. I know it's getting late in Canada. One of the people in the live chat mentioned Ron Wyatt. So he's a lay gentleman who was called a pseudo-archaeologist. What is your opinion of him?
Oh, don't get me started on Ron Wyatt.
I mean, just something honest from your opinion that, but still we want to be gentle towards him because he passed away. But still also on the other side, we want to be truthful for all the Christians out there who, have different opinion about him. So what is your scholarly objective view of his findings? How accurate are they?
Oh, I'll try and be as kind as I can. Pseudo-archaeology. He's not an archaeologist. He doesn't have a degree in archaeology. He doesn't provide any evidence for any of his finds. Most of the stuff that he claims he's found doesn't exist. Utter nonsense. Guy was sincere, probably, but his legacy still continues today. His wife's still got the organization continuing, and he's got a following among Christians. And with they claim they've got the wheel from the chariots in this Red Sea from Egypt when that happened. He claims to have found the Ark of the Covenant. He's claimed to have found Noah's Ark. It's all BS, total BS. That's being as kind as I can be. So whenever I hear his name, the hair stands up in the back of my neck and my blood pressure goes up. Because what he's really doing is a disservice to legitimate archaeology by Christians that is being done out there. Because there's no scientific validation for any of the stuff that he claims. He goes and finds sulfur balls in the Jordan Valley. Well, they're all over the place in the Jordan Valley. And he says, well, because I found sulfur balls, that must mean it's Sodom. The two things have nothing to do with each other. If you go to the Hebrew, sulfur is a different word, different translation. So anyway, yeah, there you are. Darupanar, I've been there and took samples of it. That's a geological formation. That's not Noah's Ark.
Okay, that was about me asking because I'm ignorant, but I want to know. I've been thinking about this image for like 20 years. I'm like, man, if this is true, who is preventing us to go and dig and see if there are any Ark remains? And because someone mentioned him in the comments, I'm like, well, let me use the opportunity to ask Dr. Graves. So you don't believe there is anything there that is resembling Noah's Ark?
I've been there. I've climbed into the Ahura Gorge. I didn't climb on top of Mount Ararat because I had health issues. We were trying to get our permits the year we went. It was a preliminary, but I was the only Westerner for many, many years that has climbed in the Ahura Gorge. And I've taken the Turkish military binoculars and I've looked on the Ahura Gorge side. I was part of an organization, Neil Armstrong. We all know him. And he climbed Mount Ararat, fell, and they had to take him off with a helicopter. He was part of our organization. His wife is still part of our organization for climbing from Mount Ararat. Some of my friends have climbed, Randall Price, but no, they haven't found it. The Chinese have claimed they found it, and they've got a film out, and that whole thing was staged in a cave down the road at a glacier. The Chinese Christians that did it. It's just, why are Christians so gullible? Is my question. Do your research, people. Do your research. So yeah, we've taken samples of that geological. It's called Darupanar. It's based on the Turkish soldier that discovered it, whose name was Darupanar. The Turkish people have put a visitor center up there, claiming it's Noah's Ark because it's good for tourism. But there's no geological evidence whatsoever. There's no petrified wood. No, some have claimed there was, but anyway, yeah, another one of Ron Wyatt's hoaxes that keep sucking Christians in. So I've been there. I believe the Bible's true. I believe that Noah's Ark existed. Whether it survived on that mountain or another mountain, I don't know. There's no evidence of it. If it did, on Mount Ararat, it's probably toothpicks by now because that's a moving glacier. My role was actually ground penetrating radar, and I was to climb Mount Ararat and do the ABIC 1 and ABIC 2 ground penetrating radar of it. Randall Price's team has done one. I think he's going back. And one of the friends of mine that I dug with at Qumran is also doing climbing. But they're supposed to be doing the ground penetrating radar of the one of the ice cap pieces that hasn't been GPSed. I've got a whole section in my book on that too, if people want to check it out, on the archaeology of the New Testament and the archaeology of the Old Testament. I got two books. So,
and once again, I have provided the link to the link that leads to Dr. Graves's website. So please support his work. He has dozens of books, tons of material that you can use to bless, your congregation, your family, your pastor, whoever, even yourself. But what's interesting, Dr. Graves, is that just a minute ago you mentioned a petrified wood. So when people speak, and again, these are Christians speaking about conspiracies and using certain Old Testament portions about giants and that everything was so huge back in the, old times, ancient times. They use structures such as the Devil's Tower in Wyoming to speak how these are actually not, rocks, that these are actually huge trees or remains of like tree trunks. And I'm just baffled. I'm confused that people of God, just like you said, they're gullible. They would believe in anything just because it resembles them of something or someone, or like they read somewhere. And of course, there's no scholarly source for anything. They just saw images, and they are thinking about giants or about petrified wood that would be actually supposedly this rock formation. And if you would give them any scholarly source, they would reject it because supposedly it goes against the Bible. You can't even talk to people like that.
Ron Wyatt didn't provide any of his scientific material and make it available to anyone to analyze it. Didn't have any archaeologists on the team. Randall Price, who I taught with at Liberty University Archaeology, was actually working with the Chinese so he knows firsthand that this is a hoax, that they recreated this cave with Noah's Ark in it. One of a good friend of mine, Nate Loper, he's a geologist, a Grand Canyon specialist. He's also doing his PhD in biblical archaeology. We rely on experts like this that can take it to a lab and have it analyzed properly with a proper scientific analysis done on it, rather than just relying on, well, it looks like a sulfur ball. it is a sulfur ball, therefore it must be Sodom. It looks like petrified wood. It's actually a rock. It's a special kind of formation of a rock, because there's another mountain where some have claimed Noah's Ark is at in I think it's in Iran. So yeah, you really have to do your homework. You can't do your research on the internet. And that's why I would suggest people can rely upon the Near East Archaeological Society. They're a group of evangelical archaeologists, professionally trained scholars, and you can go there for some pretty reliable material and information rather than Ron Wyatt. So check out the professionals, because what it does is it gives us a bad name as legitimate professionally trained archaeologists. It gives us a bad name, and it gives the Bible a bad name too, because then the secular world looks at that and laughs at it and says, "Oh, it's not true," and here's why, and they just poke fun at us. So do your homework. My books are all written for the undergraduate level, for the layman's to understand. Okay, it's written for that. It's not written for the professors, but there's footnotes in all of them at the bottom of every page. Lots of them. So you can do your research yourself to find out, what I'm saying is true or not. Don't just take my word for it. Do your research. And COVID taught me to do my research. So I've had to do a lot of that in the last few years, but I've been a researcher all over my life. So I just plead with people, don't accept. And, the other problem we have right now is AI. I see more AI generated pictures and images of stuff people are claiming they're finding. That's nothing more than nonsense. So it's actually doing real archaeologists a disfavor. I still use archaeology or AI sometimes to confirm some things or do a little bit of research, but you can't rely on it. I'll ask it for a reference for something when I'm looking for something in Josephus. It comes back with a reference. I look it up. It's got nothing to do with it. So you can't rely on it.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
It is really horrible. So don't rely on it. I'll sometimes put in a sentence or a paragraph that I've written myself and tell it to, clean it up a little bit. You can make it do that, but it just makes stuff up if you ask it a question. So be
Dr.
careful,
Graves,
people.
yeah, Dr. Graves, this is the last question. Just popped in. You don't have to spend more than 30 seconds if you don't want to, and then we'll do the conclusion. What is your opinion or thoughts when it comes to the Shroud of Turin?
Oh, Shroud of Turin. I've been asked that so many times, and I started researching it for my book, and it was like a rabbit hole I was going down. It had no end to it. So basically, I have remained agnostic on it because I can't get to the bottom of it. There's just too much information. You've got to be a specialist in the field. Now I know there's some new stuff that's come out recently. I haven't had time to look at it. I know that the Associates for Biblical Research just did a podcast not long ago, and they're behind it, saying it's legitimate. I'm just not convinced yet. And the problem is that you're dealing with a lot of Catholic people that consider this to be a relic, a religious relic that has, sort of sacred. And so when that comes into the picture, sometimes science goes out the window and wishful thinking comes in. So you have to be really careful about that. So, we all have biases, and so be careful. Try and be as objective as you can with going through the data, but there was just so much data coming in, so many studies and so many people on both sides that I couldn't make head or tail of it, to be honest, from a scientific perspective. So I've remained agnostic, and apart from this piece of cloth that appears to be legitimate and appears to be from the same, first century time period, whether it belonged to Jesus or not, God alone knows, and I don't need it for my faith. So it's not central to my faith. So it's not a religious relic for me, and I'll leave it there for people make up their own minds and trust the Bible. Don't trust the relics.
Dr. Graves, this was another phenomenal episode. I think the fourth one we did in the last year. I thank you so much for your time. I thank you so much for your patience, answering kindly all these questions, showing us some of some of the slides and material that you have on your laptop. Do you have any final concluding thoughts regarding everything we've been talking about tonight?
Well, as Dan Bongino used to say, I bring the receipts. So I've got the footnotes in my book. So if you want to see the receipts, and that I'm not just talking in thin air, check them out. I don't make a lot of money on them or anything, and I'm not into it to sell books. I'm in it to spread some good information for people so Christians will be educated. And I don't try and prove the Bible. The Bible doesn't need proving, because if you could prove the Bible with archaeology, archaeology would be up here and the Bible would be down here, and archaeology would be superior, and it's not. So from an apologetic perspective, the Bible is the Word of God and doesn't need to be proved true. But it certainly helps with archaeology that it lends support. It helps to encourage me as a Christian in my faith. And if I can be a little part of that with the Christians out there, keep on keeping on. Amen.
Well, I also want to thank everyone in the live chat, especially for your kind comments and questions. Yeah, this helped our episode a lot. So God bless you. If it's not a pain, subscribe to the channel, show some love. And also support Dr. Graves, buy some of his books, and bless yourself in your congregation. I shall see you the following Friday and Sunday with more guests. And Dr. Graves, may God bless you, your ministry, and your work tremendously. And may we enjoy more of your coming materials in the years to come.
Thanks for Nikolai. God bless.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
To all the listeners, God bless.